I'm Koushik from Climate Asia. Welcome everyone to this webinar on how to become a climate professional, the Climate Corps way. So this webinar is being hosted by Climate Asia in association with the Environmental Defense Fund's Climate Corps Fellowship. And in today's webinar, we have two special guests who have been through the Climate Corps Fellowship, and we have the lead and manager of the fellowship in India, Paridhi Mishra, as well, to talk about the fellowship. Today's session in the next 1 hour is going to be first knowing about Climate Corps Fellowship, what it is about and who is it for, and what's the benefits of the fellowship, and how can folks looking for climate careers take benefit of this fellowship and all of that. This will be covered by Paridhi. Paridhi is the lead for the fellowship in India. And after that, we will get into a discussion with two amazing folks that have joined us today, Shivya, Nath, and Charvie Mishra. Welcome. And both of them have been through the fellowship and they are in their own journeys in the climate careers. So we will have some questions to know more about their journey, about their work, and we will also have a space in the last part of the session for Q&A. So please note down your questions, keep it ready, and you can post those questions or unmute yourself and ask those questions to our speakers today, later at the end of the session. So with that brief, I would like to just quickly mention about what we do as Climate Asia, and then I will request Paridhi to come in to explain about the Climate Corps Fellowship, and then we will continue with the discussion. So Climate Asia, as most of you would know, is a platform dedicated to promote climate careers, climate jobs, and we help a lot of folks to transition into climate careers. And at the same time, we also work with a lot of organizations, helping them to recognize the climate intersectionality in their work, and we support a lot of civil society institutions through organizational development programs, and we do much more on our platform in terms of sharing about the jobs that are in the sector, sharing about the funding opportunities, sharing about the experts that are available to us in the climate space, and much more. Please feel free to go to our website, climateasia.org, and explore whatever we are creating as knowledge for the public good in the climate space. So with that, thank you everyone for joining. I think we have more people joining in. So I'll request Paridhi now to come in and explain about Climate Corps Fellowship. A little bit of a bio about Paridhi. Paridhi has been leading the Climate Corps program in India, and she has found her passion for environmental impact while working at the intersection of technology and social impact at a clean tech startup. She has experience in social impact and also in policy making and implementation at the grassroots level in an initiative called India Open Defecation Free. She holds an integrated dual degree in engineering from IIT BHU. Welcome, Paridhi. Over to you to explain about the fellowship.
Thank you so much, Koushik. And thank you everyone for joining in on a Saturday morning and giving us your precious time. So I'll start with a quick introduction about the Climate Corps program. Can you all see my screen? Yes? Okay.
Yes.
So almost all the time I start my presentation with this reminder that it's our choices from here on that will determine the fate that we all see tomorrow. It's an extract from the IPCC report that came in last year. So before I begin, I would like to talk a little bit about Environmental Defense Fund is. I'm sure a few of you at least would be confusing what Environmental Defense Fund is, and maybe confusing it with an financial fund. To take you on a quick story, how Environmental Defense Fund was formed, it actually goes back to 1960s when this bird osprey played a leading role in the foundation of the Environmental Defense Fund. So back in 1960s, a group of scientists observed that the population of this bird osprey was on a rapid decline in the US, and they discovered that the pesticide DDT was responsible for this. And these three gentlemen, these were the scientists that I'm talking about. So they got together with a few lawyers, took the evidence to the court, and in about 5 years, they won a nationwide ban on DDT, except for public health uses. This is when they realized the power of partnerships, of science and law, how this can create greater benefits for the environment and for us. So they decided to organize more formally and raised funds to expand their work. And so in 1967, they incorporated Environmental Defense Fund. And today, EDF is an international environmental organization working at the intersection of policy, science, and economics to get the world on a rapid path to climate stability, with healthy and resilient communities. And you may think that there is practically nothing different about policy, science, and economics that every think tank or non-profit works on. So the difference here in EDF's approach is that we believe in the power of unexpected partnerships. I'll give you a quick example of an unexpected partnership that we have been working on for the past few years. One is aligning forces with the US government and helping them design the Inflation Reduction Act, which is one of the largest climate laws that they have passed within the Biden administration, helping the Chinese government set up carbon markets, and now helping the Indian government as well. And next year, we are also going to launch a satellite that will detect methane emissions from space. And that is the kind of unexpected partnerships that I'm talking about, where we take the advocacy rooted in science to governments, to businesses, and to other influential players across the world to generate healthy and stable environment for all of us. And a part of it is working together with businesses. So the Climate Corps is actually a part of this plus business side of the organization, because we believe that large scale emission reduction can only be achieved if we work together with businesses who can drive significant reduction in emission from their value chains. So our aim is to catalyze these emissions reduction within private and public sector organization. And everything that we do, even with businesses, is rooted in science, is rooted in how we look at the vital earth that we have. And if anyone amongst you who joined today is even remotely in touch with the global news, I'm sure you would know. And if you want to become a climate professional, you would have also experienced that the reality of climate change has shifted from being this to this in only a matter of few years, right? So it's literally knocking at our doorsteps. So it is important to understand what does this climate action look like before we go on to the part where we talk about climate careers. So I would want to just summarize this in very quick steps. In a nutshell, climate action looks like this. Number one, we need to reduce our emissions to be able to keep the global average temperature rise below 2 degrees Celsius. And I'm not saying 1.5 degrees because it's already debatable that we may have crossed 1.5 degrees Celsius. And the last 12 months, honestly, have been the hottest months on Earth, on record, right? So number one, we need to reduce the emissions. Number two, we need to adapt our lifestyles and our infrastructure to changing climate. And just quickly, I want to remind you that our infrastructure are not at all sustainable in the extreme temperatures that we are going to see in the coming years. A few years back, in Texas, the entire electricity grid actually stopped working when there was a snow blizzard, because it wasn't designed to work at such harsh temperatures. So that's the kind of large scale climatic events that we need to be prepared for. And number three, if let's say we are not able to do all of this, we will have to move towards migrating our people and our lives to safer places, more specifically the vulnerable communities, to move to safer places. And this reality is also not very far. You might already know that Indonesia has been in the process of shifting their capital from Jakarta, which is going to be the first cities to get submerged underwater. So in front of all of this, you all can imagine that this would require big systems level changes in all the sectors, industries, government, programs, social sector, everything that we do, right? So the only way to make it happen is through collective action and from where we are with what we can do. For example, if you are a data scientist, you can help prepare climate models to help the government and businesses take predictive actions to help them see the climate scenarios. If you work in supply chain or procurement, you can influence how we source our raw materials more sustainably. And if you're an engineer, you can make the climate technologies easy to deploy. And you must know that we have all the majority of technologies that we need to significantly reduce emissions, but we need rapid action and financing to deploy them. Speaking of financing, if you have a background in finance, you can help raise funds and channelize money into these climate solutions and for all of this to happen. So this is why I want to emphasize that there is scope for climate action in jobs that don't have the title of sustainability manager or anything to do with climate, right? So this is the foundation of how Climate Corps was born. In 2008, we embarked on a journey to unleash the power of talent to solve the climate crisis. Through the program, we train masters, postgraduate, and recent graduates recruited from top universities and having few years of experience, and pair them with organizations determined to meet their climate goals. These trained fellows work with the organizations for a period of 8 to 12 weeks to deliver high impact projects and then go on to become a part of our global network of climate professionals. And we work with wide variety of organizations. In fact, across the globe, we have worked with almost 1/3 of the Fortune 100 companies in the past 16 years. So the program actually started in 2008. So in the last 16 years, over 700 organizations have hosted fellows in 3 countries, the United States, China, and India. And in 2021, we launched the program in India. And so far, we have been able to enable 70 fellows, almost 70 fellows, and they worked with 22 host organizations in India so far, and they've identified over 2.2 million metric tons of annual CO2 reductions. And more than 80% of these fellows go on to work in the same sector, and their organizations have actually moved forward with their recommendations in the emission reduction. So this is the nutshell of, in a nutshell, this is what the Climate Corps program looks like. There are some high emitting areas. Our advocacy for the kind of projects our fellows work on is deeply rooted in where the highest amount of emission reduction can be achieved. So the areas that you can see on screen, some of these areas our fellows work in. So our fellowship projects actually take place in freight and logistics. This would mean strategies to reduce our emissions from freight, then agriculture and food systems, which constitutes almost 30% of more than 25 to 30% of our emissions in India, and then manufacturing. Without decarbonizing manufacturing, there is practically no possibility of us decarbonizing our economy. So this is the kind of project that our fellows work on. And because Charvie and Shivya are present here, I would not go deeper into this, as they will talk about the projects they did, and it will give you a very good idea of what Climate Corps projects look like. I'll just quickly describe the process of becoming a Climate Corps fellow to you. So it basically can be summed up in 5 steps. You apply. We have a dedicated portal to apply. You get after going through a round of selection and interview. Once you are shortlisted as a Climate Corps Fellow, you get matched with the host organization, and where you work with them to identify the project areas as well. Then number 3, you go through a round of training. We have a week-long training wherein we focus on diverse topics related to climate, and also some general improvement topics like project management, like storytelling for climate, and things like that. And then you go on to work with your organization, which is step number 4, where you actually work on your project during the summer. And then number 5, you, after your fellowship is finished and you submit your deliverables, you go on to become a part of our global network of climate professionals. And I would emphasize on step number 5, which is the most important, because everything that all of us are trying to achieve is new. No one has ever done it in the past. And therefore, having a network, having a support system, and that learning and peer interaction is very, very important. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You can take inspiration, you can draw support from your peers all across the world. And because Climate Corps program is almost 16 years old, we literally have a global network of over 3,000 professionals who are spread across the world, working in different areas, either with government or with businesses, or in multiple areas, including nonprofits as well. So the network is kind of the most important part of this entire thing. I'll also quickly go on to what we look for and who we look for. So in a nutshell, we look for you having a graduate degree or a certificate, which I'm assuming most of you would have, some relevant professional background, which can help you connect the dots, which can help you see the interconnections within different sectors. Project management skills are very important. And I would like to highlight that Climate Corps Fellowship is different from an internship in the sense that you go on to work with the organization like a full-time resource, like a full-time consultant with them. So the expectation is for you to own the project and drive it towards completion. And then some passion for environmental action. This is very important because this will be your personal compass. It will guide you further. Quantitative skills, I'm sure you would all understand why this is important to connect the dots, and data analysis. Communication skills are underrated but very important, because you would be required to articulate your vision. A lot of times people will not readily have the insights or the understanding that you will build, right? Like I said, everything is happening for the first time, so it is important how you communicate. And then resourcefulness is going to be the highlight of everything. The project deliverables, the decisions that you take, they will change as the clarity emerges. In any organization, no matter where you go, the clarity will change. So you will have to pivot. You will have to find new resources, new ways of working. And being resourceful and driven will guide you in that, in doing that effectively. So in a nutshell, this is what we look for. And we really appreciate diversity, because to solve this problem, we need all perspectives. We need people from all the backgrounds to collectively come together and work on these solutions. And so quickly, again, summing up how you can become a Climate Corps Fellow. Apply. Our applications are open. First round is already over. We do have a few fellows in our cohort of 2024 fellowship, and our second round applications are closing on 17th December. Then interviews will take place shortly after. We are conducting interviews on a rolling basis. So this will keep happening through January. After you are shortlisted, you will get matched. This will roughly take place between January and February. And then once you and the host organization are able to connect and confirm, that's when we take the engagement forward, and we'll help you prepare for your training and the fellowship. So that's all about the Climate Corps program. If you have any questions, any doubts, I'm sure some of it we'll be able to cover in the session ahead. But otherwise, you can always reach out to us on LinkedIn or email to Aradhana and I or any of our fellows. We'll be happy to help you. Thank you so much. Koushik, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Paridhi. Thank you so much for the uh, very comprehensive presentation on the fellowship. I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions from all the participants, but I thought it would be a good idea to continue with the discussion while a lot of fans' questions might actually be answered through the discussion with the guests that we have today. And
Sure. And
probably
people can
we'll,
keep posting their questions in the
yeah.
chat, and Aradhana and I can also answer them in parallel if that works.
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. So please feel free to share your comments and questions on the chat box. So Paridhi and Aradhana would be responding to all of that, and whenever required, we will also, by end of the session, we will be also answering some of the questions. But let's start with the discussion. So we have two amazing folks, Shivya and Charvie, welcome, joining us. Today. So the bios of Shivya and Charvie is on the screen. So both of them have gone through the Climate Corps Fellowship. Charvie has done it in 2022 and Shivya has completed in 2023. And Shivya is doing amazing work around climate conscious travel. And she is now pursuing master's degree in sustainability and environmental management. And Charvie is now with the team sustainability team at Mahindra Automotive and Farm Equipment Limited. So she is now looking at focus on ESG considerations and climate risks, directly working in the corporate sustainability space. Uh, so I think the way we are going to structure the next 10 to 15 minutes is to first understand the journey of both Charvie and Shivya, uh, how they found the fellowship and like how they stepped into this journey and a little bit about that, and then we will talk more about like the experience within the fellowship and how the fellowship fills the gaps that are required for a skilled professional to transition into the climate space. So the first question basically would be, I think I'll take the liberty to first pose a question to Shivya. Shivya, if you could share about your journey in the sector, in the environmental sector, focusing on entrepreneurship and the work that you do, and what initially sparked your passion for this kind of a cause, and how did your participation in the fellowship actually contributed to the evolution of your perspective in working in the space? If you could share a little bit about that, it would be very helpful.
Sure, Kaushik. So first of all, thanks to Climate Asia and EDF Climate Corps for having me here. So I think my journey really began over a decade ago when I did my first, professional corporate stint, which was with the Singapore Tourism Board. And that it wasn't focused on sustainability, like that wasn't even a big thing back then. But it was really focused on, digital marketing, and that introduced me to the world of travel. And at some point, I decided that, I wanted to actually go out into the world and travel. So I ended up quitting my job and kind of became a freelancer. So I worked for a lot of different things. I wrote for different publications like BBC, National Geographic. I published my own book. I worked with nonprofits and social enterprises. And I just took every opportunity I got to travel. And I think it was that traveling that first introduced me to what is happening with the world. So a lot of what we saw, in terms of travel was, like the glamorous side of things. But every time I met local communities, I kind of understood that, there is something big happening in the world, which is, of course, climate change and erratic weather patterns and so forth. And they are directly affecting people who are probably the least responsible for it. So, in terms of their consumption, in terms of their self-sustainable way of life, the impact is being felt the most by people who really don't have a role to play in causing climate change, but they are being impacted. And I think that's where that awareness came in, that, my storytelling should focus on, bringing these issues to light through the perspective of travel. And then, of course, the pandemic happened, and traveling kind of went out of the picture. And that's when I started reevaluating my life a little bit to think, what more can I do, besides being a storyteller? How can I, play a role in actually getting the tourism industry and also like the broader world to a place where there's a lot more climate action and it's taken in a way that's equitable. So, local communities also benefit from it. And so I started pursuing a master's degree, and a fellow student had done the Climate Corps Fellowship just the year before. And she just had an absolutely great experience. And so I decided to apply for it, and I was lucky enough to get the fellowship. And I think the fellowship it came at the right time in my life because I was at a point where I needed to figure out, do I stick around being a storyteller and doing what I've done for the past decade, or do I now transition my career towards, working more in the field of sustainability, where the focus is really on helping organizations build their climate strategies and reduce their emissions. And I think with the fellowship, I realized that the latter is the direction I need to take. And so with my consultancy, Climate Conscious Travel, that's what I'm focusing on now.
Super, thanks, Shivya. I think, yeah, the travel and exposure, and I think that has helped a lot for you to sort of take this journey. So let us hear from Charvie as well. So Charvie, you work in the most critical sector, EV, equipment manufacturing, and playing a key role in ESG for one of the largest corporate entities in the country. So how did your journey begin, and how did you find this through the fellowship?
Thanks, Koushik, and thanks, Paridhi, for inviting me. Also, it's almost eerie how similar Shivya and our stories are on how we sort of transitioned to sustainability. So I basically grew my passion for sustainability when I was working in the fashion industry. So that was around, I worked in the fashion industry for 3 years. I was in sourcing and supply chain. So as Paridhi mentioned, you see the factories there, you see how the working conditions are, and you see the amount of waste that is being generated just for making fast fashion, just for making clothes. And that is sort of what triggered me that, okay, what am I doing with my life? Like, what am I contributing towards? So that is where my passion for sustainability started. And during COVID, I also had some similar experiences. I started looking into myself. Is this the career path that I should be looking at? And also, what was happening in the world around us? We saw justice crumbling during COVID times. We saw how people who were privileged like us, living safe lives while others who just had to migrate and had so many problems and were directly impacted by COVID. So that's where I chose, okay, I need to learn more about this. I need to understand sustainability. It's a very complex subject. That's why I decided to do my master's in sustainability management. And I got to know about EDF Climate Corps from an alumni as well who did it last year. So I reached out to her, got to know about it, met Paridhi and Nath, the team at that time. And that's how my journey for EDF Climate Corps pretty much started. And I think one of the key insights that I learned personally through the fellowship was that I can break boundaries. Like, what can I achieve while I'm working in an organization? Because I come from the fashion industry uh, with no background of climate sciences, and my whole project was on climate risk. So how I was able to learn that skill and make an impact then and there, I think I broke some boundaries in my head as well. So that is how the fellowship really enabled me and really helped me put in a climate change career ahead. So I'm very thankful for the fellowship in that sense.
Thank you, Charvi. Talking about skills, right, like that you mentioned. Uh, so when we think about climate action and the way the things are evolving, if we call it climate sector or space, so how does a professional catch up with the evolving scene of climate crisis and the skill sets that are required to solve these problems and skill sets that are required for us, any of us, to be a good professional. I think that's constantly evolving. So my next question is about how the fellowship has equipped you or helped you to sort of develop those kind of skill sets, and how are you continuing to do that in the present work that you are doing? This question is to both of you. Like, feel free to any of you can answer this. Shivya, do you want to?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. So I think the fellowship for me was, in a way, like Charvie mentioned, a way to kind of break boundaries both within my own head and like in the bigger picture as well. Because, like I mentioned, I've been associated with the tourism sector for almost over 10 years. And my fellowship was with NSCFI, the National Solar Energy Federation of India. And my project was on agri-PV, so agro-photovoltaics, which is the co-use of land for both agriculture and solar energy generation. So it was a completely different scope of work for me. And it was a steep learning curve, not just learning about sustainable agriculture and solar energy, but also using the two together. And so my project really focused on identifying diverse stakeholders to build India's first agri-PV alliance. So that included, for example, farmer producer organizations, women-led self-help groups, solar developers, researchers, and so forth. And all of that culminated into a stakeholder roundtable that we did at SEM, the Clean Energy Ministerial. And so in terms of skills, I think what the fellowship kind of exposed to me was that the whole field of sustainability is so new, both in India and globally, that we have to of course, research is a good place to start to build those skills. But for example, pursuing a degree can be really helpful, or like a specific kind of skill. So for example, learning to calculate scope 1, scope 2 emissions, which I'm currently doing as part of my program, or looking at value chain emissions, building GHG inventories, and so forth. I think people who start that journey now will really be at the cutting edge of what organizations need maybe 10, 20 years from now, especially here in India. And we're already seeing regulations coming into play in the US and like in the EU as well. So it's only a matter of time before that happens in India as well. So I think that kind of upskilling is really important. And a fellowship like this is almost like a step in the door, especially for people who are looking to transition from, maybe a more conventional career into something more sustainability focused. And so, just that exposure to work with, everyone from like the senior management of an organization to having this entire network of people who have been working on projects like this, which you get exposure to through the Climate Corps Fellowship. So I think taking opportunities like this to upskill yourself and then put those skills into action, I think that's a great place to begin for anyone who's looking to transition into a career in sustainability.
Thank you, Shivya. Charvie, would you like to share about the project that you worked on and how it helped?
Sure. So I think regarding how to really navigate sustainability, like the first question that you asked, is to just be a lifelong student. There's no way out of it. You have to keep learning, you have to keep building your skills. And regarding my own personal journey with EDF, my project was on climate risk scenario analysis for Mahindra's upstream supply chain. As you can see, it's a very technical subject, requires a lot of skills in climate science, in management tools like paired matrix evaluation, stakeholder analysis, a lot of things. So what I understood was that you just have to ask the EDF team, really. So they go through a 1-week training program before we start our fellowships. So there I requested them to give us a good overview of how climate risks work. So I got those resources from the alumni at that point as well. And Paridhi and Namit, they were kind enough to even connect me with teams who already, and with organizations in India who already do these kind of analysis. So I was connected with WRI, I was connected with Shakti Foundation. It's only a matter of ask how you want to tackle the problem at hand. So I decided that I cannot become a climate scientist in 2 months. That is impossible. So I made sure that I understood the concepts clearly. I went through TCFD, I went through IPCC, I went through all the resources necessary to understand the concepts. And then I decided to become an enabler. So how do I make sure that the organization I'm working with does that analysis as I move forward? Because it's a long-term process. Climate risk analysis usually takes 9 to 12 months in the first go to do it if you want to really do it properly. So I did a short-term analysis for them, and then I made some guides. I made some impact modules for them to ensure that they continue that process. So, and that is something, becoming an enabler, I believe, is important, and keeping on learning. I think that's the best way to go about it. And I think EDF really helped me put me on that path. Yes.
Great. Yeah, I think two most important points. I think this is a great stepping door for anyone looking for career transition and lifelong learning journey. And that's where the fellowship actually helps you to be in touch with the right people, right resources, and right places. So there are a lot of folks looking for transition, and what do you think are the emerging trends in the sector right now that one should look for? What strategic opportunities one could look for? I mean, we are talking about the fellowship, but overall, if we look at the ecosystem, so what do you think are the emerging opportunities, and how can one take the opportunity of this fellowship to sort of embark on that journey? If something from your experience and observations, if you could share, that'd be very helpful.
So maybe I can go first. So I think like Charvie mentioned, we're really seeing like more and more organizations need the skill set, and very few people have it at the moment. So I think what is really important is that people who already have deep sectoral experience. So for example, you might have experience in let's say freight or agriculture or tourism or whatever industry that you have been part of. And then if you can, kind of build your own skill set in sustainability within that sector, I think that will already position people already at the forefront of things in that sector. Because, like if we, like there are some resources available, like there's, IPCC and there's, science-based targets initiative and stuff like that. But really like going deep into the sector that you already know about and then building your knowledge around environmental management within that sector is a great place to begin. And then looking out for opportunities where you get a step in the door. So whether that's through a fellowship or that's through an internship, or there are programs now for people who want to transition their careers into climate. So really looking at identifying areas that are important to you. So like climate risk could be like GHG inventories, and so on. So I think really that transition of sectoral experience and building your skill set within sustainability within that sector, it's a great way to get started.
Absolutely, I completely agree. So that is what I was going to say as well. So I started my journey in fashion. So what I simply did was I was in the front end and back end. So I decided, okay, what am I missing here? So I realized that no, there are no courses on sustainability as of now in the organization I used to work at. So I just contacted the team who was handling sustainability reporting. And I said that, you know what, I'll take extra time. I'll make the awareness program. So I learned from Coursera and then I made the program, you know. So you have to be a self-starter, I guess, to really, if you're passionate to do it, because sustainability requires passion. And I think it's important to be an enabler as well. So whether if you can build awareness, guide whenever you have the possibility of doing that, create an environment for people to take action as well. These are all very important things. And I think Shivya here and Koushik and Paridhi, I think we all do that on a regular, everyday basis through our platforms like Climate Asia and Media. Being an enabler, I believe, is the most important in this whole process, because sustainability is everyone's business by the end of the day. So, yeah.
Great. Sustainability is everyone's business. That's true. So we have interesting questions coming up, but before we go to those question and answers, so I would like to request you to share one piece of advice or a suggestion to the audience for someone who's looking to transition into the career in climate. What would be that advice from your experience?
So I think I think something that we all feel, and maybe, I speak for everyone here, is that like we all feel like a lot of self-doubt, like who am I to, play a role in this sector, or who am I to try to change the world, or, change an organization or something like that. And I think maybe today is a good day to set that self-doubt aside and just take that first step towards, thinking of what that transition will look like for you. So maybe it begins with a simple Google search to see what sustainability looks like in your sector or in your sector of interest. Maybe the next step would be to see, what kind of skills you need to build and what are some programs that might offer you those skills and what that timeline would look like. So I think it really starts with the small steps. And to be honest, like it's such a new field, both in India and globally, that there are no experts yet. Like people might, position themselves as experts because they've been doing it for 5 years, but actually we are all learning along the way. And like Charvie said, it's really about lifelong learning. So taking that first step today could, maybe tomorrow make you the expert that everyone looks out for.
Thank you, Shivya.
Absolutely. And I think just talking about it, I think that makes a lot of difference. Just talking about your passion for sustainability, asking questions in forums that matter to you, in places where you feel that you have the possibility of making a change. I think taking that first step, just asking questions about sustainability, okay, why is this not happening in the organization I'm at? Or if you're in a program, or if you're like learning, then you can ask, why do I not have a sustainability course here? Like, just asking the right questions itself can make a huge impact. And then probably you can be the one who takes that step to make that change. That is all I can advise as of now. And yes, please do apply at EDF Climate Corps, because I really do feel from the bottom of my heart that it can give you a lot of determination and like really light your path ahead to what you want to do later on. Because currently I am with the organization I'm with at Mahindra. I started my journey with them with the fellowship, and now I'm taking forward the project that I did with them during the fellowship. So I do think that it's important to just take that first step and look for opportunities that you feel are right for you.
Thank you for those suggestions, Charvie and Shivya. I think we can end our discussion here. Thank you so much for offering those insights and sharing your experiences. I'm sure this must have been very helpful for a lot of us in the room. And I think I think we should now talk about the fellowship a little more in terms of like how, because the questions that are coming in the chat box are also about how one can apply and secure this fellowship. This fellowship, about the fellowship and about transitioning into climate careers doesn't really require a lot of convincing, at least in this room. So there are many people who have come here to sort of apply for something like this. And this fellowship does seem like a free way to sort of like, explore the climate career. So it's kind of very well structured opportunity. Very rarely something like this comes across in life for someone looking for this kind of a transition. So we'll quickly jump into the chat box questions, and the questions can be answered by either the speakers, Shivya, Charvie, feel free to answer to them, or Paridhi, wherever required, please feel free to answer. The two questions I have is, what according to you helped in your application to secure this fellowship, and how does the matching happen? While your background is different and the companies you're matched with is different from your background. So I think the first question could be answered by the speakers, like what could be a good way to secure this fellowship through the application?
Okay, I'll go ahead with that. So very good question, Sanjana, because like this is exactly what happened with me. I come from the fashion industry, was doing a master's in sustainability management, and got matched with Mahindra, which is an automotive company. So I think what mattered was, I mean, Paridhi will be able to answer it better, to be honest. She's the one who took my interview. But for me, it was mostly the steps I took to transition into the sustainability role, as I mentioned, during my past work experience and my master's, and the subjects that I had in my master's as well. That also helped me that also helped with that, and also the fact that I was doing some internships while doing my masters as well. So that sort of helped me get into a good space. That okay, if I can work in fashion, I can work in. I worked with Nestle also for some time. So if I can work in these different companies doing sustainability initiatives, then I can also do that with Mahindra. It's the sector is different, but the work sort of is on climate, so it remains the same. So that was the possibility that I think that is what sort of helped. And the second question also, since I did transition into full time, so I think it's a matter of hard work and luck. So I did the fellowship exactly a year back, and and I told them very clearly that I am interested to be a part of the company full time as well, because I saw that Mahindra is a leader in sustainable mobility in India, and that is something that we can do. Like we can really build the future for sustainable mobility in India through Mahindra. So that's why I put my position very clearly that I am interested to be a part of the team. And thankfully, once I was graduating, there is a position that opened up for that. So and they had already seen my work for 2 months before, so that's why it was easy for me to get into the company. Uh, so yeah, there is definitely a possibility. It requires that you do well in your fellowship, and also just having the luck that there's a role available at that point of time. Yeah.
Thank you, Charvie. Maybe I can jump in and answer the matching question. Shivya, do you want to add anything before that?
Please go ahead, Paridhi.
Sure. So I think I'll answer the matching question here, how we match, and given that the backgrounds were so different. So it's partly, Charvie, I think, covered it, that she had worked in similar organizations. So this is where your background kind of plays a guiding role, your background and your actions that you take to pursue what you want to pursue. Like if I take specifically her case, she had worked in supply chains, though in fashion industry, but she had an idea of supply chains, upstream, downstream, as well as she was doing a sustainability management master's degree. So she had an understanding of the subject matter as well. And the project that Charvie worked on at Mahindra, it was heavily focused on the upstream, downstream supply chains specifically. So there was a direct link. It wasn't in the same sector. It involved a lot of climate science learning and understanding, which she was already doing. So she was on that path already, and that's what helped. For Shivya also, I think what was the key factor was she had that diverse experience. She had interacted and worked with multiple stakeholders, and her project at NSCFI involved her to interact with multiple stakeholders and bring in insights from them, because they are actually trying to carve a path for the deployment of agri PV in India, right? Which requires you to build an understanding from ground up, to listen to everybody, draw general inferences from what is happening around. And Shivya had done that. A storyteller does exactly that, draws inferences from specific instances, right? So she had that experience, which really helped. This also gives me a segue to answer the second question about whether experience is necessary. It's not mandatory, but it definitely helps. We do prefer people who have a couple of years of experience, because that really helps you create an impact during your fellowship, because it's a short time. You have to own your project deliverables and deliver on them within a span of 8 to 12 weeks, right? So having some experience already really enables you to bring that change. So it's not that we would reject your application because you don't have full-time work experience. Maybe you would have done internships. Maybe you founded an organization during your academic career. So maybe you had that kind of experience. But it does help, and we do give a preference to experience. I hope that answers.
Yeah, there's another question, Paridhi. So, any sort of requirement of work experience or having a master's in the field related to environment qualifies for applying from jury?
Yeah, I think same thing. It's a preference. It's not mandatory, because we believe that, and we have seen this in our projects as well. Like Charvie also just gave a very direct example. She didn't have a climate science background. Shivya didn't have an agricultural background, but they were able to quickly learn and match and come to that level of understanding. So having some experience and some exposure to the subject, it helps you build that clarity very quickly that you will be expected to give to the project and the organization you are working with. So it's not mandatory, but it would be, good to have. And will set your application in the top tier, I would say.
And Piyush asks if freshers can apply and how can they contribute?
Well, Piyush, I would encourage you to apply because we do see the applications in its entirety. There have been cases where fresher fellows have been a part of the cohort. They did really well, and they got selected because they had other experiences. So it's not just that you have a degree and that will be the only factor here. It will also matter what you're doing otherwise. I'll also take an example of a fellow from last year, Jatin. Coincidentally, he also worked with Mahindra. So he came from biotechnology background. He didn't have any degree in climate and sustainability, and he was working as a product manager in biotechnology related organizations. But while he was doing all of that, he had done so many courses independently on sustainability. He had spoken to so many people, worked as volunteer with some people. So there was that clear hunger in him to learn about sustainability and work on it. And that was reflecting while we also ask case based questions during our interviews. How you can quickly build your understanding on the topic. He was able to answer those questions well. So what I'm trying to say is that these degrees, experiences are an indicator that you have those experiences, but those are not the only ones that can determine that. So I would encourage you to apply if you have other elements that can demonstrate your learning and hunger and experience. We will definitely look for that.
Thank you. There's a question from Vinod. He's currently employed and asking if he can apply and if it is feasible for him to continue with the current job while participating in the fellowship.
Well, unfortunately, with the current job, it may not be possible because the fellows are expected to work full time, at least during the course of the fellowship. So if you are available full time during those 8 to 12 weeks, by all means, please feel free to apply. We won't be able to give a consideration for your work and do a part-time kind of work. That won't be possible. And in some cases in the past, there were instances where people were transitioning. So they were in between jobs probably, or they had taken a sabbatical from their work. That's when they were able to do the fellowship. So something like that can also work, but not part-time.
And there's a question from Rishabh, pursuing MSc in Environmental Science from BHU. What is the career options? What are the career options for climate space?
Well, Charvie, Shivya, do you want to answer that? Since you're closer to the degree scenario, I'll maybe jump in.
I think what I know, I'll answer. So as per my knowledge, a lot of consulting firms are looking for these kind of degrees because they look for expertise which like businesses ask for later on for these kind of analysis. So yeah, I think consulting firms is one of the options. Sorry, I'm not aware for MSc what else is required. So I think Paridhi will be able to answer better there.
Yeah, maybe just to add, I'm also seeing that a lot of organizations are now looking at people having scientific backgrounds to work in their sustainability team. So even in an industry like tourism, like one of the biggest tour operators, Intrepid Travel, they've hired a climate scientist to lead their sustainability team. And a lot of people who have specialization, from a scientific perspective in climate, they're also finding that they can be a lot more impactful besides, doing their own research, is to work with organizations where they are driving, on the ground impact and actually reducing emissions and coming up with those plans. So I think the possibilities are quite endless.
And just to add to that, it would help tremendously if you build your skill set beyond the technicalities and only science. Having some managerial skills, project management, stakeholder management, and general management skills would deeply help, because it's not like all the time all the organizations will be able to serve you a well-defined problem statement for you to work on. There may be a lot more open positions where you can build that clarity while you work with them. So we kept saying enabler during this entire conversation. To be an enabler, first enable yourself, polish your skill set, become a climate professional who brings in more than science on the table. I would say that would open up a lot more positions for you, and it would help you find and align with a lot more organizations.
So the next question from Sanjana, probably Paridhi can answer. This is about how many spots available in the fellowship and how does the acceptance rate look like. Meanwhile, Parul, if you would like to expand the question and elaborate it a little bit about what do you mean by post-retirement options.
How many spots are available? I would say it is becoming competitive year on year as the fellowship. It has been 3 years so far. Now a lot more people know about it. So it is getting competitive. This year we received record applications. And I think Aradhana will be able to tell the exact number, but we did receive interest from more than 1,000 people, which has never happened in the past 3 years. So it is getting competitive. And the acceptance rate is then proportionally, improving. So we have a cohort. Last year we had a cohort of 29 fellows, and going forward this year again we are expecting close to 25 to 30 fellows. So you can imagine from 1,000 people, then that gets competitive. I hope that gives you a reflection.
Thank you. Parul, so Parul's question is, she's 60 and passionate about sustainability. Is there anything that she can do to be part of Paridhi?
Sure, Parul. I think you would have so many experiences and skill set that you can use to guide organizations and people who are moving ahead. If you already haven't started on your learning journey on sustainability, I would encourage you to do that, so you can marry your guidance with relevant sustainability related topics as well. So I think you can be that guide for younger generation in the sectors that they are operating in.
I would just like to add to that, Paridhi. So I know of examples like people in defense who are now retired, and it's actually my father. So he retired 2-3 years back, and he was in weather services in the Air Force, and now he has since he was already a weather expert, so he upgraded his skills, worked on climate change, and now he's a consultant for climate change as well. So and he does like 1,000 times better job than I do. So because of all his experience. So I think, Parul, there's a lot of things that you can do pertaining to what your skills were previously, because sustainability is needed in everything pretty much. So I'm sure you'll be able to make a huge impact on all the youngsters here. So I wish you all the best, and please feel free to connect with me anytime.
Super.
And
I think
just one more point on that, Parul. I think there are many senior professionals who are trying to transition to this sector. Maybe a brief, and there would be positions across non-profits as well, advisory roles. Maybe you can consider those. I do know that ILSS has a board program wherein they help people find these options, like you have the experience, you want to be on the board, and they have the organization, so maybe you can try that. Koushik, over to you.
super. All right. So we have one more question in the chat from Rishabh. Should I have to engage with Excel remote sensing field? Rishabh, could you please elaborate on that? And that would be our last question. So we are already over time from our plan. Do you want to elaborate on that question?
Maybe as far as I can understand, I'll answer your question, Rishabh. It will depend on what your project is. If your background is in remote sensing, GIS, and your project also requires you to work on that, absolutely, I think that would mean having those skills and tools available. But it may be possible that your project doesn't require, or your background is not in technicalities of remote sensing. So it depends.
Great. So, yeah, let us conclude here for today. And I'm sure there'll be many more questions coming up when you start the application process. So feel free to reach out to the EDF team and to Climate Asia team, and we'll be able to help you through the process. And thank you so much, Shivya and Charvie, for taking out time today and sharing your insights. And thank you, Paridhi, for patiently answering all the questions. And thank you, everyone, for participating today. And I hope this session has been immensely useful. I hope to see many more folks coming into the climate space via this fellowship. So this is almost like a highway to the climate careers, one of the freeways to the climate career. So with that, I wish you all the best to all the participants. And there is an email ID of Aradhana in the chat box. Feel free to reach out to PDF team if there are any more questions. Thank you. Have a good day.